don't know how to start. I've been thinking for a little while now. I wanted to talk about a few things that either is very hard to find out information on, it's very hard to truly understand, or just to find any other people that have honestly experienced similar situations. And one of those ones is things associated with twin flames, which is something that I had heard about a few times. I'd never really looked into it, or I think I looked into it once, and then obviously I didn't like what I'd read and I was like, nah, that isn't me. And it wasn't until very recently that someone had just mentioned to me, sort of in a passing comment, like, oh, fancy meeting a twin flame so young, and I just kind of laughed it off. And then it wasn't until a few months later that I was doing some tarot readings, and the comment came back into my head, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll ask the question, are we twin flames? And the card that came out was the Two of Cups. Yeah, that's a confirmation. And it hasn't been until I've really sort of started looking into it a little bit more that it's given me a lot of clarity for certain things that I kind of experienced and thought, why is no one else understanding kind of what I'm saying or what I'm feeling? And one of those ones is soul shock. Now, meeting your twin flame is probably one of the most sort of profound situations, moments that you can really have, because you're sort of recognizing them for the first time, but it's also not the first time, because you kind of just know that you've always known them, and they just kind of automatically feel like home. And sort of whatever relationship that you've experienced with your twin flame, it's not the conventional relationship that society kind of dictates or expects you to be having. It's a connection, like, you know, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all levels. It's kind of incomparable really to explain. It's not the same as what society would say, oh, you have a relationship and then it doesn't work out and you forget them and you just jump on to like the next person or scenario. Once you've experienced such a deep connection, the deepest connection really that you can possibly have with another person, because they are your identical twin in soul form, you know, that just isn't possible. And it's kind of just beyond sort of the basic understanding that society has created this structure for. But the main thing really is it's a journey, because your twin flame really is a mirror. You know, they're your equal. They're going to be your greatest teacher and your greatest confidant and your bestest friend. And the most difficult aspect of this kind of twin soul journey, because really the journey isn't about them. Really, it's about yourself. You know, this other soul that's identical to you and drawn to you is just kind of a byproduct of that. But the most difficult sort of aspect of that is the so-called separation stage. Physical separation. You're never truly separated from them. And after you've met, after your initial sort of physical contact and you've connected, you may most likely would have had a relationship with them. And it is different for everyone. That is just the general trend that tends to happen. But everyone's experience is individual. But the most difficult aspect of it is obviously the initial physical separation. This is when your ego, your mind is all of a sudden the dictator of everything, how you feel, what you're thinking. And usually this separation will catch you off guard, whether the separation is emotional or physical or communication. Perhaps they've completely ran away, they've abandoned you just like that, or they've cut you off. Any form of sudden extreme one end of the scale to the other. Simply, you're not connecting in the authentic, pure way that you used to. And it feels like all the connections that you have are just severed. And they're not, obviously they can't be. But it does tend to feel and look that way to the ego mind. And it's perceived that way as well because you're physically absent from them, or they're physically absent from you. And it's such a contrast for you to suddenly wrap your mind around, because you've gone from this profound connection to suddenly being cut off. Meeting your twin flame is almost like realizing you have an extra limb that you never really knew existed, and then you have all your limbs. And separating can feel very much like you're amputating that limb, and then you have this phantom pain where it used to be. So obviously this separation results in soul shock. This is the thing that when you experience it, it will be like every single person around you just will not understand why you're so affected by this, because it's intense. It's probably one of the most, it's more intense than any other connection obviously you're going to have in your life. And it's confusing, it hurts, and it's lonely, and it feels like no matter how much you try and explain to people that, you know, that it's just not right. Deep down it's not right, and people will just be like not quite understanding, because it's not the conventional relationship that society dictates that, well, they've made up their mind, you need to get used to it. And that's just something that, well, you know is wrong, because your soul understands that you won't be able to move on from them. You know, you are capable of experiencing other connections, other romantic connections, but once you have met your twin flame and you connect with the authentic core of their soul, you know, and you then vice versa, and you experience that depth of the connection, your soul, you know, you can't just move on in the way that society says you should, and you can't just forget them. You can't just continue on in a way that you would for a soulmate or a karmic relationship. With this soul shock, it's very common for the ego to want to step in and to blame yourself and to blame the other person and judge everything that's going on, and really question everything that you've experienced together, and really question yourself as to, why am I so sure about how I'm feeling, how wrong this feels, when everyone around me is just saying that, oh, but that's life. Now, usually the twin flame that's considered the more spiritually awakened first usually is also then referred to as the chaser. Now, this is most often the divine feminine, the more aware twin flame, more spiritually awakened one, which really you're both spiritually awakened, otherwise you would not have been identical soul twin flames. But the one that's more consciously aware of it first, more sensitive, more in tune with energies and your higher self, and more intuitive, will experience this soul shock more profoundly. And you will, as the chaser, doubt why the runner is seemingly not experiencing these feelings, not experiencing this soul shock when you are. But the truth is, they are experiencing it. They are just more capable of repressing it in a way that you, as the chaser, aren't. And you may worry that the runner is going to forget you and the depth of your connection, but this is simply not true. This is just your ego, your mind speaking feeding you these doubts and these fears, because both of you do experience it in equal parts. It's just that obviously one is more capable of repressing it, and they're just more capable of shoving it down. The runner will only be experiencing this temporarily. They can't repress these feelings forever. And as they continue in their own personal journey, they will find themselves less capable of repressing it until they will feel it as intensely as you. Now, I think the most important thing, which is like what I thought about when I wanted to make a video talking about this, is that it is completely normal to feel this way. This isn't something completely abnormal. You are not overthinking this. You are not too obsessed, as some people might tell you. You are not hung up about this at all, because it will absolutely shake you. You know, it will feel like the floor has been taken from underneath you, and it can sometimes manifest as physical pain, such as an ache in the chest. It's very common for your body to ache, for you to feel sick, to feel fatigued. You have this unshakable sense that obviously something is very wrong, and you are correct, because you are divinely intended to be aligned with this person. You are intended to be an identical match with them. And obviously the whole point of your human experience and your journey here isn't to be with this person. It's just, again, it's a byproduct, but every cell of your being is drawn to them, and you have been your entire life, even before you know it. It can also feel like deep grief, and it sounds very dramatic, but it can feel like that grief runs deeper than perhaps if you were grieving a loved one, which is quite hard to wrap your head around. But I can say from personal experience that is very real and very true, and I can't quite explain it. You just kind of knew that you may be able to come to terms with a physical death with more ease than coming to terms with your mirror soul running away from you, because you're also grieving a part of yourself. Really, they are identical to you. Their soul is identical. They vibrate at the same frequency. So really, you are grieving a part of yourself, and now that has been lost and that has been ripped away from you. Soul shock can also manifest in physical forms or physical paralysis. You can feel unable to move, unable to get out of bed, you can feel heavy and weighed down, and your daily routine can be completely interrupted. You can feel like you can't fully function, you can't go to work, you can't exercise, or just do anything that you used to just find natural and you didn't even think about doing, because it feels like you're suddenly not sharing your life with this soul in the physical. And now in the physical, everything might feel hollow, it might feel depersonalized, and you might be just seeing this shallow world around you at first that you don't feel like you can connect with and just doesn't quite make sense to you. Emotionally, you can also feel like it's difficult to connect with other people, especially in the way that you used to, or you may feel completely disinterested in other people, friendships, romantic connections, because in comparison they look so shallow to what you experience with your mirror, your twin flame. And I think it's helpful for people to hear that if your twin flame is running, they can't imagine a future with anyone else either. They can't move on in the conventional way that society expects, even if it doesn't seem that way. And they might not be able to say it, or they might not be able to accept it. And that might make them angry, it might make them frustrated, and even if they are pursuing a third party, or they're trying to experiment with another relationship, or trying to force another relationship, or just telling themselves, maybe I should just give this a go, because their ego mind is trying to convince them that they should, or because it feels safer, a safer connection where they don't have to be vulnerable, and they're not fully seen, and they're not fully understood, and they're not actually fully capable of being authentic with this person, truly authentic. But this is something that the more spiritually aware they are, and the more in tune they become with their higher self, which eventually is going to be inevitable, but obviously there's no timeline for this, but eventually they will be less and less capable of repressing that feeling that you have always been and will be their person and their best friend, and just the greatest, deepest connection that they can have with someone, and really the safest and most understood they can be, despite at first running from that because it might overwhelm them. Something else I think is very comforting to hear is that these outside influences that you are coming across, obviously, the people around you, maybe your family or friends, everyone around you is most likely telling you, well, they've made a decision, they're gone, you're crazy to continue to want them, why would you be thinking about them, why would you even continue to love them? And you may question yourself, or you may doubt yourself for continuing to love this person despite whatever they're doing to run away from you and this connection, which they can't. It's going to follow them everywhere because it's inside them. And you'll probably ask yourself, why are you so hung up on them? And other people will probably ask you this, and other people will probably be mean to you, and they will probably judge you, and this can make you feel very alone and very misunderstood, because you just feel like no one will truly understand something that is almost inexplainable. And if you are a twin flame, which I think is important as well, to not label yourself as this be all and end all, or I'm a twin flame and this is my purpose here, because it's not. It's just a name that's been given to better describe what type of soul you are and the connections that you can have. But if you are a twin flame, it's very unlikely that you've encountered other twin flames up until that point in your life, mainly because your soul decides to incarnate in unawakened spaces or family groups or areas that your presence will help the other souls around you to learn and to grow. And that's why it's so often that you find others by using online platforms, such as searching for this stuff on Google or on YouTube or whatever groups that you're finding online. Now, if you are experiencing this perceived separation, physical separation, I think the most important thing that you can do personally for yourself is to ground yourselves and start participating in your own sort of inner healing, inner work. Turn the focus from them onto you, because this journey is not about them. Really, it's all it is about you and your progression and your growth and being more aligned with your soul and becoming more authentic. And You can do things that will feel like they'll help you. Any inner child healing or shadow work or anything that you feel like, one, heal your insecurities, can heal your fears. Anything that really you think I need to let go of these insecurities and these fears. You can clear away your blockages in your chakras, get rid of negative belief patterns, old wounds from past lives or this life. You can do anything that really you feel like will help you, but the main thing is you need to turn your focus from them onto you. And I know it's the start, it's very hard. You feel like you need to continuously chase them because your ego is almost telling you that, oh my god, if I don't chase them, they're going to forget about me. And they're not. But obviously your ego is so scared of this that that's all you're listening to. And if you are the chaser, you usually are forging a way for others, because obviously not everyone is going to be awakening equally at the same time or in a linear fashion. And if you are experiencing this runner-chaser dynamic, that can also swap. It can swap, it can go round and round in circles, but there's some things at the moment that I think I'm still not the right time for me to talk about. I feel like the soul shock was probably something I can talk about because, you know, I've experienced it now and I'm on like the other side of the soul shock where I'm very capable of understanding what is my authentic self, what my intuition, what is truly going on, and what is my ego mind trying to speak to me, and what fears it has and what insecurities it has. Now I think I'm going to close off this video. I hope it's been comforting for anyone who does find it and does continue watching to this point. Just know that you are not alone in this, and if you do feel lost, that's okay, you will at first, but it's just something that you are going to figure out on your own, but you will figure it out. And what you are feeling at first is completely normal, it's completely natural, because you have experienced a loss, this deep level soul connection in the physical world that is going to be very hard to come to terms with at first. So don't be so hard on yourself as you process this. Commit to your inner work. Commit to growing and progressing yourself and working on yourself. And trust that everything is unfolding the way that it should be. Try and release that fear and try and release that control you have. In fact, try and take a complete step back. Try not to... I mean, this is going to sound like something that really at first you're not going to want to do. Eventually you'll get to the point where you might figure it out yourself, you might hear other people and it might resonate with you and you go, you know what, yeah, I'll give that a go. Try not to energetically keep thinking about them or checking up on them or trying to exert any physical attempts on this right now. Just trust the process, because you have fears that, you know, they won't come back, and they will. They might not. But you are never truly separated from them. You know, you are identical souls. So you're always going to have this connection to them, and they are always going to have this connection to you, and you are like two magnets. You're either pulling each other together or you're repelling each other, and the more you push, the more you're going to repel. So just take a step back, be kind to yourself, nourish yourself, maybe go and do something that you've always wanted to do. Start looking into things like, how can I find my soul purpose, how can I do things that bring me joy. Maybe look at how can I raise my vibration, anything that's going to make you personally feel better. You know, be creative, do what calls you, do what inspires you and makes you almost giddy with purpose. So yeah, This is probably a much longer video than I intended, but oh well. If you've joined me this far, thank you. I really appreciate it. And if you do resonate with this content and you want to subscribe, fantastic. I'm obviously just starting out with bits and bobs with what I kind of feel like doing. Nothing's going to be regular. I'm still dipping my toes into stuff I'd want to cover, things that I want to look into. But yeah. And I will leave you there. Have a lovely day. Bye.